Welcome to Aussie Bookkeeping Basics, the podcast that helps Australian small business owners understand their numbers without the jargon. Welcome to Aussie Bookkeeping Basics. Honestly, this episode, why your bank balance is lying to you. This is one of the biggest light bulb moments for many business owners. So if your numbers have ever felt confusing or unpredictable, this might just explain why. Let's start with what your bank balance is. What your bank balance actually is a snapshot of what's sitting in your bank account right now when you're looking at it. That's it. It doesn't have any context. It doesn't tell you what's coming next. It doesn't tell you what's just come out. It doesn't tell you what's going to be paid tomorrow. And it definitely doesn't tell you what that money is actually for. And that's where things start to get tricky. It doesn't tell you that you've got to pay your GST obligations tomorrow, that 3 days from now a client's going to make a payment for an invoice that you sent them yesterday. It only tells you the exact amount that's in your bank account right now. Your bank balance is just the snapshot of now. But my point number 2 is that your bank balance leaves out some really important pieces of the puzzle. So it tells you how much is in your bank account right now, but it doesn't tell you things like bills you've received but haven't paid yet, expenses that are coming up soon. It doesn't tell you the invoices you've sent but haven't been paid. And also a really big one, it doesn't tell you how much of that money is set aside for GST and tax obligations. So you might look at your bank account and see a number that feels really positive or really negative, depending on what number it is. But in reality, that number is not the be-all and end-all. It is not the full story. A portion of that money is already spoken for, and it may not actually be showing you all of the information that you need. Next point is the GST Trap. So especially for Aussie businesses who are registered for GST, this is a really big one. Part of the money coming into your bank account isn't actually yours. I'm going to repeat that because it does sound weird. Part of the money coming into your bank account isn't actually yours. It's GST that you're holding on to on behalf of the ATO. You are basically just a tax collector if you're registered for GST. Not just a tax collector, but a tax collector is amongst the hats that you wear. So if you're not separating that out mentally or even physically, your bank balance can look a lot healthier than your actual business financial position is. It can also look a lot worse. Then BAS-time rolls around, and you have a little, conniption fit because, oh my goodness, I've got $100 in the bank account and I've got to pay this bill for $1,000 to the ATO because you haven't set it aside. In a moment, I'll talk about some strategies for that. But yes, so your bank balance is just a snapshot. It doesn't show you the whole picture. It especially doesn't take into consideration the obligations around GST, and it doesn't help you to understand the full picture of your business financials. So let's talk about the practical, right? Let's go a real life practical example. Let's say you've got $10,000 sitting in your account. That sounds great, right? I think any of us would be happy to have $10,000 in our bank account at any one given time. But okay, so we've got that. If you've got that $10,000, let's break it down then. Maybe $2,000 of that is GST. Entirely possible, right? Also, maybe you've got later on this week, you've got a bunch of annual subscriptions coming out or bills that you've got coming up. And maybe that cost comes up to about $3,000, say, just an example. And maybe there's a few expenses you've forgotten about, right? There's that really random subscription for something that you'd forgotten about. Suddenly, that $10,000 is not actually $10,000 you can freely spend. It is gotten down to what? Less 2,000, less 3,000, less a few hundred. It's less than half of that. So that $10,000 is really less than $5,000 in reality, right? When you're taking all of the information into context. And this is where people can accidentally overcommit or overspend or feel like their money is constantly disappearing because they're relying on that bank balance to tell them information that the bank balance cannot tell you. So why this creates stress? When you rely on only a bank balance, things feel unpredictable. One minute you feel fine, and the next you're really stressed about covering something. Often that will be GST or, tax obligations or big bills, right? It creates this like constant roller coaster almost. You're feeling fine one minute, the next you're feeling stressed, and this constant sense of I should have enough, but I don't feel like I do. So not only is it not solid business practice in terms of business financial decision making, but it's also not a great place for our nervous systems to be living in. So what can we do instead? Keeping it simple, right? I'm not trying to make life more complicated for you, but let's try and, mitigate some of that stress. Let's take the complexity out of it and also make sure that you've got that peace of mind. So 4 steps, really straightforward. Number 1, being aware that your bank balance isn't the full picture. Just, take that number, that $10,000 or whatever it is at the time, and remember, this is not the full picture. This is not all the information. Number 2, keep an eye on what's coming in and going out. This is really vital. Again, knowing the cash flow ebbs and flows in your business, that is actually really key to solid financial decision making in business. Number 3, setting aside GST if you can. I'll talk about that one in a moment. So set aside the GST as soon as that income comes in to your bank account. And number 4, regularly checking your numbers, not just your bank account. So run financial reports like your profit and loss, your balance sheet, and even just look at what your budget is compared to your actuals. So like being aware that your Zoom subscription or your whatever else annual registration or licensing thing comes out in May, say, or it might come out in September. Just being aware of those ebbs and flows, right? Or just that your accounting software renews, that subscription comes out at the end of each month. But whenever that happens, just being aware of those kind of fluctuations is really key. And those things alone can make a huge difference, right? Now, back to that setting aside GST if you can thing. One of the tips I give all of my clients is, you should have a business bank account, right? So that assumption underlies what I'm about to say. So you'll have a main business bank account, and I recommend having a second business bank account. Now, casting our minds back to like probably pocket money days, I don't know if your parents had the same kind of system, but we often were encouraged to split our pocket money into what we can spend, what we can save, and what we can give away, right? So donating to other causes and things like that. It's that envelope system, right? A jars or envelopes, or like similar to the profit first methodology, where each time you have income come in, it gets divided up into different things. But from a really streamlined, non-complicated way, have 2 bank accounts. Have one, which is your main business transaction bank account, and that's where all of your income comes in. You pay your bills from, all of that kind of stuff. All of like your Stripe payments, your Square payments, your PayPal payments. Any clients that pay by bank transfer have your FPOS, feeding into that main account, right? So your transaction account. And then have a separate bank account. And I recommend it's the type of business bank account that doesn't have a debit card attached, so you can't accidentally spend it. But and interest accruing if you can. But a separate bank account, which is your GST account. So, for example, when income comes in, you then keep the majority of it in your transaction account, but then you transfer off the GST. Okay, so an example about that is, say you've sent a client an invoice for $110, right? So a customer pays $110 for product, service, whatever. If you're GST registered, $100 of that belongs to your business, and $10 of that actually is not yours, it's the ATO's. And again, underlying assumption of this as well is registered for GST, and I'm talking about products and services that are GST applicable. So have GST on them. That's a whole separate ballgame if you are like an allied health professional who provides services that don't have GST and that kind of thing. It's a whole other ballgame. You can come back for another episode about that specifically and how to manage GST on that in that situation. In any case, back to it. GST registered, GST on products and services. Client pays $110 into that transaction account. Then you take that $10, which is the GST amount, and you transfer that straight across to the GST account. That means that when comes BAS-time, you will actually have either the right amount or an amount that's close enough to not give you, GST shock in that bank account ready to pay to the ATO straight away. Once you've figured out and crunched all those numbers, you'll have it there. Then that way you avoid that shock of, oh my goodness, I've got to produce money out of nothing, right? That peace of mind is going to stop your nervous system having to live in that fight or flight or that really anxious, I should have enough money, but I don't. And it also avoids the danger of overspending, overcommitting, and feeling like your money's constantly disappearing, right? So put your GST aside in a separate bank account. Okay. In any case, your bank balance is not the be-all and end-all. Your bank balance is lying to you because it only tells you the current bank balance. It doesn't give you that extra information. And it also, really importantly for GST registered businesses, it doesn't deal with the GST and other obligations. So let's not do that, right? Let's make this simpler and less stressful for ourselves. So if your bank balance is something you've been relying on, please know that you are not alone. This is among the really most common things that I see. And it's absolutely something you can fix, right? It's something that we can put systems in place. It is something that can be dealt with. And let's live our lives and operate our businesses in a really healthy manner, right? Thanks so much for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks so much for spending this time with me. If you'd like to keep learning together, please hit follow and stay connected through the Aussie Bookkeeping Basics podcast. I'll see you in the next episode.